Bridget Phillipson's Education World Forum speech was designed to sound serious, generous, and international. In this video, I'll look at what it got right, what it left out, and what it really tells us about the direction of send policy in England. The short verdict is this: it was a statesmanlike speech, calm, polished, and politically smart. But when you listen closely, it's far stronger on values and positioning than on delivery. It tells you what kind of country the government wants to sound like, not exactly how it plans to fix the system. The speech's strongest feature was its moral framing. Phillipson didn't talk about inclusion as a bureaucratic duty. She framed it as part of the kind of society England wants to be: fairer, kinder, and ultimately stronger. That's politically smart because it shifts send from a niche issue into the centre of national identity. A second strength was the international positioning. Phillipson was careful not to present England as the country with all the answers. Instead, she cast it as a partner in a shared global challenge. The proposed International Send Alliance fits that approach well. It sounds collaborative, forward-looking, and well-tuned to pressures many education systems are already facing. Another strength was the historical framing. By invoking Ellen Wilkinson and the spirit of post-war reconstruction, Phillipson gave the speech a bigger sense of purpose. She wasn't just talking about school policy. She was tying education to social repair, democratic resilience, and national renewal. That's a more sophisticated frame than a standard ministerial speech usually manages. The biggest weakness was the gap between vision and delivery. The speech was eloquent about why inclusion matters, but much less clear on how the government will make it work in practice. There was very little on funding, workforce capacity, accountability, or the EHCP system. And that's the real test, because school leaders don't need a moral case for inclusion. They need a plan they can actually deliver. The second weakness was what the speech chose not to confront. It largely sidestepped the domestic send crisis in England. There was no real engagement with tribunals, EHCP delays, stretched local authority budgets, or the growing gap between need and provision. That omission felt deliberate. Politically, you can see why, but as policy communication, it leaves out the hardest part of the story. A third weakness was the lack of recognition of pressure on teachers and school leaders. The speech asked schools to carry a big moral mission, but said very little about burnout, send workload, recruitment problems, or the tension between inclusion and the current accountability culture. That's a serious gap, because inclusion only works when the adults expected to deliver it actually have the capacity to do so. Read politically. This speech was doing several jobs at once. It helped define Labour's education identity as inclusive, values-led, and less obsessed with hard-edged market language. It also seemed to prepare the ground for future send reform by shaping the moral vocabulary around it now. But that creates a risk. If the reforms later feel restrictive or underfunded, this rhetoric will come back to haunt the government. So overall, this was a thoughtful and politically skillful speech. Its strengths were clear: strong moral framing, smart international positioning, and a well-judged sense of history. But its weaknesses were just as clear: too little on delivery, too little on the domestic crisis, and too little on the pressure schools are already under. My verdict is that it was an impressive statement of intent, but not yet a convincing plan for reform.